Hey everybody, it's Tia Noir. So I put my plastic down and my paper so that way the paper will absorb the marker. I went ahead and did the first part of the curtain just to make sure that I was good with my markers, because I kid you not, when I was doing the change out of my markers last night, I hadn't changed out any dried markers in quite a few months. I ended up having over 50 markers I had to replace last night. I didn't think I had as many that were drying out as I thought I did. But so when you're doing your lighting, you look at your light source. And the way I tell people best way to learn lighting is to go out, go for a walk the dog, take your camera with you, whatever, and take pictures. Look at the sun and how it falls across objects at certain times of the day, or when you're sitting here at home and you have a light source. Look and see how the shadows fall across certain objects. And that's the best way to learn lighting, and watch how it falls. I did that when I was starting to learn 3D art. It was so helpful because in the 3D art I do, I actually have to put the lighting in the images myself in order to make them 3D. So it takes practice. So don't get mad at yourself if you don't get it first try. I know a lot of people, they do it where they color the dark spots gray and then they go over it with marker. I have a different way of doing it. I actually color 1 or 2 shades darker than the color I'm working with, so that way it looks a lot more clean and vibrant and just stands out more, I find. So in this case, with this light, it's going to give off light diagonally and straight down. So before you start, if you're new to it, I highly recommend you get a ruler and a pencil, and make sure the pencil is erasable. You don't want to press very hard with the pencil. You want to just lightly put the pencil in there and draw the lines where your lighting's gonna fall. Me, I've done it a few times. I don't need to do that anymore, but I just don't recommend pressing very hard with the pencil, because if you go over it with marker and then you go to erase it, it's gonna mess up the ink. That's why I say press lightly, because that way, even if you go over it with marker with a darker color, you're probably not gonna see it. So in this case, since it's going to be coming off diagonally here, I just quickly color in where the light's falling. And this color's R2. The new code is R014. And then the new code on this one is R016. Which used to be R180 in the Ohulu markers in the black bags. So I just color over that. Looks like this marker is actually starting to get a little bit dry too. So real quick, I'm just going to, while it's still wet, do a few strokes with that one there. And then I'm going to take R8. That's the old code. I'm not sure on the new code. And come down with some quick strokes from the top, because it is going to be darker at the top of the curtain compared to the bottom. And then again with the first color, we're just going to come down and around And there's going to be no shadows coming from the people that are sitting in the booths above the stage, because they're above and there's no lights. And back to the second color, we're going to go along around these little guys, I don't know what they're called, and then her feather, we're going to create shadows. As you can see, I did that also on the other side. And then we're just going to quickly do a few strokes here, because it's going to be a little bit darker since it's a little further away from the light. So that's the curtains. Make sure our papers and plastic isn't moving too much. Now let's see. The light itself, now we're going to try to make sure that we don't press our arm or our hand on what we just colored, because the oils from your hands is going to make it go funky. A lot of people color light to dark. I usually do, unless I'm working on some kind of image. It just all depends on what I'm working on. So these little guys here, like say, I don't know what they're called, but I'm using Y270 and Y260. That's the old color codes. Most of my markers are still the old color codes. And we're just gonna shade that in real quick, and then we're gonna come back with Y260 real quick. And we're gonna blend that together. Usually, depending on the colors you're using, will depend on if you have to use the blender. But since I've been using colors so far that are so close to the same color, I just have to go over it a couple times while it's still wet for it to take the blending. And now these girls on stage, I picked out blue and green for their colors. That way it doesn't interfere too much with the red. So I got G8 and G9 here. And I'm going to go over first with G8. I find sometimes if you start with the light color and then go to the dark, depending on the color, it will blend easier. Especially if you catch it right when it's still wet. And then I have B120 and B110 for the blues. So again, we're going to go over with the first color, the lighter one, B110, and then we're going to go it doesn't look like much right now, but once it dries, you'll be able to tell the difference between the two colors. And then for the green, I grabbed G1 and G390. So we're going to quickly and remember, coloring with alcohol markers, you either want to do quick long strokes or short quick strokes, and you want to color a little ways from the actual line of whatever it is you're coloring, or it will bleed over. And then while it's still wet, I'm going to take that G390 and I'm going to come in and feather up with the brush. That way it's getting some kind of contrast to the colors. That way the light looks like it's reflecting on the dress, creating the light at the top and darker at the bottom because it's further away. So again, we're gonna come in with the top. Not sure what color I'm gonna do that bow. Maybe I'll do it a combination of the colors I did with the feathers. And again, under the bow, we're just going to trace slow and quick at the same time to create that shadow. I know slow and quick sounds weird, but we're going to color this in. And then this quickly. And then once I get that, we will do that. And then we're just going to color the little bit that's under her chin. And then the blue, I grabbed B440 and PB3. Again, that's old codes. And we're going to do the B440. This one's always been a really juicy marker, so I have to be extra careful with it. And you don't need to press very hard with alcohol markers either. I noticed a lot of people say that alcohol, oh my goodness, alcohol markers bleed and they're really, you know, going over the lines, and it's usually because they're pressing too hard. And the PB3, I don't know if this is gonna, it should be dark enough, because the 440 is pretty dark, but I might have to go over that again. I guess we'll have to wait and see when it dries. But a lot of people say alcohol markers bleed so bad, and it's usually because they're pressing way too hard. You just gotta be light with it. So here we're going to quickly do that, and then we're just gonna take the B120 and do that. So that is that portion. Now we're going to do The two colors I grabbed now are E460 and E450. They're browns. So the lighter color is the E450, so that's going to come off this portion because it's lighter. And then the E460 will be the top portion. Which is the darker color. And then it's going to be the same on the other side. And because we can see more of the foreground here compared to the other side because her feathers are in the way, I think I'm going to have to press a little bit harder with this one because it's starting to dry out. What we're going to do is we're going to create that shadow again on the lower half of this side of the wood. Because the light's going to be further away. Actually, we could probably do a little bit on this side, not very much though. And then the next part I'm going to show you, I'm actually going to stop this portion of the video because we're creeping up on 18 minutes and my camera's going to stop. So we will stop there and I'll restart the camera here in a moment.